This is a
But
very informal environment. Feel free to eat. We don't want to stop you from doing that, especially now that it's lunch. Um, but let's dive into it. I apologize for the delay. Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Breshma, and I'm the Student Development and Leadership Coordinator in the Office of Student Life. So we're continuing the financial empowerment series with today's workshop, credit cards and credit scores. How fun. So before I introduce our facilitator, some announcement. Today's session, like all others, is being recorded. Please stay muted unless you're speaking. We encourage you to engage in a chat as we dive into the content. We want to ensure that the session flows smoothly. And please hold your questions or put them in the chat while we go through the workshop. We do have a raffle happening for a book for those who attend and stay throughout the session. And I urge you all to give Ananya your time and attention, whether you're on or off camera, cooking or eating or doing whatever else that you're doing. And now allow me to introduce our speaker, Ananya Jalan. Ananya will provide some background about themselves, but I want to remind everyone, Ananya is not a financial advisor. The information provided in this session is for educational purposes. And now I'll pass the virtual mic to Ananya.
thanks, Reshma, and glad to see so many familiar faces, and welcome to everyone who's joining for the first time. Today's series is going to be on credit cards and credit scores. Just as a quick agenda before we begin, we'll have a check-in. We'll go through our topics that we're going to cover today, and then we'll deep dive into what is credit, why do we use credit, how to use credit to our advantage, what the impact of a credit score is, and then how to choose a credit card, some perks and some tips and some considerations. And like always, we'll go into actionable next steps. We'll finish off with Q&A, and there will be resources provided at the end of the session, and then the feedback questionnaire and survey. Let's begin with the check-in. So who am I? For so many familiar faces, we've met in previous workshops. My name is Ananya Jalan. Academically, I finished my master's in management science and engineering, a lot of finance, engineering, operations. I worked at the stock exchange and the SEC, which is the police of financial institutions. And I was a consultant for a financial health company. And my aim is to create a dialogue around financial aspects more openly in our lives. Why is the discussion around financial health important? Money permeates across aspects of our lives, and it plays a role in how we interact within our relationships. And while we can't control our income levels sometimes, or even sometimes our expenses, we can observe how we feel about them and move in the direction to give us more control with our feelings around money. Thank you for being here. No matter what feelings you have around math or finances, maybe negative, you're anxious, you hate dealing with money, maybe it overwhelms you, maybe all of the math overwhelms you. You may be obsessed to the point where you go in and check all of your accounts and your scores and your credit cards all day. Wherever we are on that spectrum, thank you for showing up. And I also do want to acknowledge the complex systems that we live in. The financial system is known to be one of the most complex systems ever created. And we're going to go through and make sure that we have the knowledge to empower ourselves to move in the right direction. We also do understand that inequities exist. And so this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So going through the series, it's about acquiring knowledge and moving in the right direction with respect to that knowledge. And lastly, let's foster an environment of interaction. I know this group has been interactive and in the chat, raising your hand, asking questions. So I know I don't have to tell you again. And the 3 people that stay through the duration of the session will be entered into a raffle to receive a book by Ramit Sethi, which is called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. For those of you that may have already received the book, I hope you've been reading it and going through it. And I definitely want to hear more about how that's been. And just as a disclaimer, I am not an attorney, accountant, psychologist, or financial advisor, nor am I holding myself out to be. The information that is contained in this workshop and presentation is not a substitute for financial advice from a professional who is aware of the facts and circumstances of your individual situation. With that, let's begin with credit cards and credit scores. So what is credit and why do we use it? Credit is an agreement between a borrower and a lender that allows the borrower to obtain funds, goods, or services now and repay them later, usually with an interest. Credit is sometimes used interchangeably with creditworthiness and is measured by a credit score. Let's break down that definition. A borrower is the person who requires the funds, goods, or services. Lender is someone that gives it out. Now you'll ask me, what is the difference between credit and a loan? They're both finance products or mechanisms of borrowing and lending money. The difference is that a loan would be giving a lump sum of money at one time or in intervals, whereas a line of credit is used as required. It is extended to you and you can use as much or pull from that, and you're only charged according to what the interest is only charged based on what you pull. Whereas for the loan, once you've determined that amount that you need, an interest would be charged on all of it. I have linked resources at the end of this presentation that allows you to read more about the differences. But just getting into the different types of credit, we have four main types of credit. You have installment loans, which are your home mortgages, your auto loans, your student loans. You have revolving or lines of credit, which are more commonly seen in credit cards, a home equity line of credit, personal or business lines of credit, where you can take loans out with putting up your home as collateral or putting up your business and revenue as collateral. You also have charge cards or open credit, which are similar to credit cards, but you need to pay the full balance. And you have service credit, your utilities, your internet, your cellular phone bill. All of these things are actually credit. They're giving you services and you can pay them back for those services after a set amount of time. Now, why do I need credit and how does it work? So I want to own my home. I want to go to school to improve my work prospects or to learn more, but I require a large sum of money. And that's where I decide to borrow from a lender because I don't have that money. And how do these institutions that are giving us money, these lenders, know whether we're trustworthy or not, right? So I decide I want to borrow from a lender. I want to take a student loan of $40,000, or I want to buy a vehicle, or I want to buy an even bigger thing, which is usually a home for, we know in New York, at least, homes don't come cheap. So how do they know that when they give me the money that I will be able to pay back that amount to them? So these are the aspects where credit and credit history come in. So credit history can be the make or break to determine whether we are able to do these things that we want to do in life that require larger sums of money than we have. And it can determine whether we get that loan of a mortgage or car or student loan. And it can also determine how good of a loan we get in terms of how much interest we pay over time. And I'll give you an example in the coming slides of how our credit scores determine how much interest we pay and how much of an impact it has. A common question that I might get is, can you live without credit? You certainly can live without credit or having a credit history or a credit score. But there are things in life that become easier when you have a good credit history and a good credit score. And we'll definitely go into more detail of credit scores. And you can also build credit without taking on a loan. You can start off by taking a secured credit card, which means that you deposit a certain amount with your banking institution, and they give you a line of credit equal to the amount that you have deposited. In other words, you're using your money as collateral to your card, and that helps you build credit. Angela, I see you have a question.
Hi, yes, two things. I saw a SoFi commercial and I immediately thought of you and I was like, "Eh." Um, and then the
That's
second
good.
thing,
That's good.
yeah, and the second thing was, what is a revolving line of credit? Like I've seen that before, but I'm not too sure what that means.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to explain. So a revolving line of credit. So if you have a credit card, you might see that you get $1,000, whatever your credit limit is. They give you a certain amount that they say, okay, you can spend up to this much on this credit card. So that is your credit limit, which we will also get into the details of next. But if you don't use all of it, or however much you use of it, you'll still have a remaining amount. And the entire amount, if you've paid it on time, let's say you paid in full every month or every billing cycle, the next billing cycle, you will have that entire $1,000 available to you again. So that revolving just means you will keep having it as long as you pay everything back on time. Okay, let's get into how does credit work. What is credit? What is a credit limit and credit utilization? So this is some of what Angela we briefly just discussed. Credit limit is the maximum amount of money that a lender will allow you to spend on a credit card or a line of credit. So that is what institutions determine that they should offer you as credit. Again, going back into how they determine their trust, which is a lot of complex math and algorithms based on your current loans, your credit score, your personal income, and also your history of repayment of both your credit and your loans. We'll also get into debt utilization ratio. So a debt utilization or credit utilization rate or ratio is the amount of credit you are using divided by the total credit available to you. Let's break this down. So let's say I have two credit cards. They're both with two separate institutions, and they're offering me different amounts of credit limits. So when I was in school around 10 years ago, I started off with no history, and I started off with a standard credit limit of about $1,000, right? Now I've grown, I've started using my credit card, I've paid back my credit card. And so I was eligible for another credit card. So now I have two credit cards. So let's say one credit card gives me that $1,000 and another credit card gives me another $1,000. So the total amount of credit given to me is $2,000. And if every month I use about $600 in debt on my credit cards. So let's say in February, I used about $600. So what was my credit utilization rate? How do I calculate that? The total credit available to me is $2,000 and I've used 600 of it. So mathematically, it's 600 divided by 2,000. So that gives you about 0.3. And that is equivalent, if you multiply it by 100 to convert it to a percentage, it's 30%. So generally, if you add up all of the credit lines that are available to you, your home equity line of credit, your business credit, your credit cards, sum all of those credit limits up, that is your total credit available to you, and then look at how much you're utilizing. Now, just because you have all that credit doesn't mean you should use it. And generally, you want to keep your credit utilization lower than 30% if possible, and make sure to pay back those revolving lines of credit in full. The other thing to keep in mind is if you do have multiple cards, you shouldn't spend all of your money on one single card, because what's going to happen is the utilization of that card is going to become very high. And so if you can distribute it, that also in turn does help your credit score and credit utilization. And the general rule of thumb is that the better your credit the lower your credit utilization, the better your credit score. And the main thing to note here is that just because you have all of that credit does not mean you should use it. And if you don't have the cash available in your bank accounts or hard cash available to pay off your purchases or to plan to pay off your purchase, you should not use all of all of that amount available on your credit card. We'll also go into the fees that we should consider on credit and credit cards. The first is annual fees. So this is more commonly with having a credit card. The annual fee is just a fee for having that card. Usually it can range from about $90 to $95 to the Amex Centurion, which costs about $5,000 a year to have that card. The second is interest charges. This is something we discussed in our last session. Interest or annual percentage rate is the amount that you will pay in interest if you don't pay off your balance in full in each billing cycle. So if you have any balance left over that you haven't paid, the interest percentage rate is usually about 25 to 30. It could go higher, but again, that is determined by your credit score. The last fee that we'll cover is the late payment fee. So in addition to your interest charges, if you're not making your payments on time, you may be charged a late fee. It used to be in the range of about $29 to $40, which is quite steep. But it was recently lowered by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to about $8. And what are different cycles? So a billing cycle or period is the length between the last statement close date and the next. It's usually 28 to 31 days. You also have a due date, or also called a payment date, which is the last day to pay your credit card bill without incurring a late fee or interest fees. You need to pay at least the minimum amount due, but if you can, pay off your full balance in each month if you can. So let's take this as an example. My last statement close date was February 15th, and the statement closing date was my next statement closing date is March 15th. So from February 15th to March 15th is my entire billing cycle of 29 days. Let's say my statement balance as of March 15th is $1,300. That was the total amount I spent in that cycle. And my payment due date is April 12th. So my statement closes on March 15th, and I am allowed to pay it until April 12th. So they've given me 28 days to pay. And that is known as the grace period, which is the time between the end of your billing cycle and your due date. So I am paying for my purchases between February 15th to March 15th. That is my billing cycle of 29 days. Any purchases that I've made then ends on March 15th. That is known as my statement balance. And my payment due date is 28 days that I have to pay off that balance. What is credit score and all of its associated terms?
Oh, can we pause? I know that was a lot. Does
Sorry.
anyone have any questions? Because statement current balance versus statement balances can be confusing for people, and they often don't know what to pay and when. So does anyone have any questions, concerns? I see Angela, go ahead.
One more time. So you said the due date is like the grace period after the last statement closing date. So that's just like the little extra days they give you to pay it off before they're like fully closed, like all the things.
Exactly. So
Okay,
if we look at I just opened up my credit card statement. My last statement ended on March 15th. So everyone's is different. You can also go into your credit card account or to your bank directly. You can call as well. And if it helps you, you can change those around. But from all of my purchases from February 15th, which is my last statement closing date, that's something you can see on your app. Or you can call your bank. The last statement closing date to the current statement closing date. And then the other thing you need to make sure of is your payment due date. And so, yeah, that grace period is between your last statement closing date and the payment due date. That's
gotcha. So in essence, should you then really be paying your cards like on the last statement date and closing day, as opposed to the due date?
You can, but that grace period it does help out where you can take whatever, determine how much you want to pay, and then pay your statement balance. But you should be paying your statement balance in full.
Gotcha.
Because
Okay.
if my payment due date is April 12th and my statement closed, so I'm paying for February 15th to March 15th, but my payment due date is April 12th, I should pay that statement balance in full, which is everything that I have incurred from Feb 15th to March 15th during my billing cycle. That is due on April 12th. I need to pay all of that in full. You don't need to pay your current balance in full because from March 15th to April 12th, I would have also made purchases. But that will come in my next billing cycle and I'll have another grace period to pay for it. So make sure to
Gotcha.
put your statement balance in full.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
then
Okay.
you won't incur those interest charges.
Gotcha.
Hey,
Okay.
Vivian.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope that's clear. Hey, Vivian,
Mhm.
you have a question?
Yeah, more of a question. I found it interesting that um you're recommending to use different cards if you need to, because in my opinion, I do the opposite. I only use one card at the time, even if it's a big amount, because it's easier for me just to remember one credit card payment than two and three when they have, different dates.
Yeah.
It's like, for example, I'm paying my tuition with the credit card because I'm only taking one class, and then
Yeah.
I get reimbursed at the end of the semester by my work.
Yeah.
So I'm doing like a huge, payment, and little by little I pay, and instead of just going with 2, 3 different cards. So I found it interesting that you're just telling me to split it. Will that affect my credit too? Because I do have multiple cards in zero, and one that is, like with a big loan.
Okay. So there are some instances, again, it's very circumstantial and it's based on things that are personal to you. And so especially like some of us pay rent with our credit cards, right? And that's a big sum of money, tuition that you cannot, usually there are no mechanisms in place to split those costs across multiple credit cards. So in those cases, absolutely, you need to use one credit card. You want to manage one credit card. That is absolutely fine. You should do it. Sometimes there are no workarounds. The reason to kind of split against various credit cards is because they do look at your utilization per card. It's not going to affect your credit score massively in case, you're paying it off. If you paying it off in as much as you can and meeting your minimum balances. And so sometimes there just aren't any workarounds. It's just helpful because what happens is some credit cards report your credit, the amount of credit you've used or utilized to credit agencies at different times. So what might happen is they might report your credit that you've spent your rent credit card or your tuition credit card, whatever credit card you've used, and your credit utilization looks like it's, you're using 100% of one credit card. And so when they report that to your bureaus, for some time, your score might go down. And so that's why they say this maybe split it across if you can. But there are just some instances where we can't. So that's why if you try to pay before your payment due date, that would help because usually it's around your payment due date that they report your utilization, your 80% or your 100% to the credit bureaus. So just keep that. That's why that cycle becomes important. We should keep those due dates in mind.
And one more question. So if, let's say I have all my credit cards in zero, would that also lower my score because I'm not having any utilization?
That's a great question. It does affect your score negatively. Even having 1% credit utilization over 0% can increase your credit score. So make sure that, if you can, again, you don't have to, you can definitely keep credit cards at zero. If you're going to forget about them, it's better than, incurring a late payment or fees. So there are some trade-offs that you have to make, but yes, at least if you have credit cards, if you can try to make a purchase that you would normally make with cash on a credit card and make sure to pay that credit card. Again, you don't have to make one purchase on each credit card, but making sure that your entire credit utilization is over 0%. So even one charge on one credit card per month even if it's to pay for the subway or something, is better than having 0% utilization? Good question. Okay, we're gonna dive into credit score and its associated terms. So credit score and why is it important? A credit score, it's also called a FICO score sometimes, is named after a company that created it, which was the Fair Isaac Corporation, or FICO. It's a mathematical model that rates you between 300 to 850 on how likely you are to pay back money on time if you borrow it. So similar to how we were in school, or how we are in school, where we get grades or percentages, it's very similar to that, but it's just that the scale is different. Generally, the better credit you have, the lower interest you pay. So, for example, if I am trying to buy a car of $50,000, which is the average car rate right now for a new car, and I'm taking a 60-month auto loan, let's say I have a credit score of 680, I will end up paying interest of $14,500 on top of that $50,000. So I'm paying about $65,000 for that car. Now my friend Angela has a credit of 720, so just 40 points higher. And Angela will pay an interest of $10,000. So Angela saves almost $5,000 compared to me. So why pay the banks an extra $4,000 if there are simple things that we can do to improve our credit score, right? If your credit score is about 550, you'll end up paying $25,000 in interest, which is $15,000 more than Angela. So there's some certain things that we can do to ensure that we at least keep track of our credit score and our credit utilization. So your credit score does impact the types of loan you take. Mortgage, it would impact it. Auto loans, student loans. So those interest rates are impacted. It can also impact your ability to rent. For those of us that rent in New York City or rent across the US, it can impact it. It can impact your insurance and also your cell phone plan. Did you know that your cell phone plans, you can have more people on your cell phone plan, which reduces the cost you pay per month if you have a better credit score? So yeah, some things to keep in mind. So credit score can impact various parts of our lives. How is credit score determined and how do we check it? There are three major credit bureaus, the TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, which provide information on your credit habits. And they have all of these fancy algorithms that have a combination of factors which are listed. It's the length of your credit history, how long have you had a line of credit, your payment history, the amounts that you owe, and your credit mix. Credit mix is basically whether you have a home loan or you have an auto loan or you only have credit cards, and then also new credit. And you can check your score with your credit card company. So that's the most easy way of checking it, where you just go into your credit card app or your banking app and you can check your credit score. The other areas that you can check it are listed. They're myfico.com. But you do have to pay for that. You can also request a detailed copy or detailed report, which is free. I think it's once each year from the three reporting agencies, which are TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, or you can visit that website that's listed or call the number. And just going through the typical ranges, 800 to 850 is exceptional. 740 to 799 is very good. 670 to 739 is good. 580 to 669 is fair. And then 300 to 579 is poor. These are used to determine, again, your interest rate, ability to rent, and other areas of your life. And ideally, again, to have credit score or an excellent credit score, a thing that you can play around with. The easiest thing to play around with is that credit utilization, where we're paying back our credit cards or our lines of credit before they're reported to the bureaus, and try to keep it under 30%. Again, circumstances vary. We need to take these into consideration, but if you're looking to increase your credit score, this is one method to do it. And also make sure to try and pay off your credit card a few days before that reporting date. You can also call your bank to understand when that reporting date is. Usually, as a rule of thumb, it's around the payment due date. So if you can pay off your credit card or your lines of credit before your credit due date, that is usually the best policy. And just by law, for if for those of you that are trying to check your reports, you cannot be charged more than $14.50 for your credit report. And there are a large number of circumstances that allow you to get one for free. So if you can also, again, try to minimize it or look for those free resources from accredited bureaus to get it for free. And you can also check it from your credit card company, just your credit score in general. Hey, Kim, I see you have a question.
Sorry, I just had a quick question about the three agencies. Is there a difference between them, like regarding our credit score? Is it the same with the three? Like, do different loan providers check specific ones depending on the kind of loan?
So good question. They have slight differences in their algorithms. Again, they're all going to be checking based on those same factors, your longest line of credit or the length of your credit history, payment history, and your amounts owed. So they're all going to be checking the same information. It's just that the way they calculate it in their back end, in their own models, is slightly different, but your credit score should be within a small range of each other. It should not vary, 5-10 points between one or the other. Because the information that they get is the same. It is just if you're going out for a mortgage or an auto loan or a student loan, your bank or the place where you are borrowing the money from, your institution, they have different tie-ups with different unions and with different credit bureaus, and they'll determine who they go to. I think you can generally ask who they're going to if you're taking a loan. But usually it shouldn't have too large of an impact. So that level of detail is okay, but it can become too granular.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Angela.
Does your credit score impact student loans in any way, or is that calculated just a little bit differently?
I think I do want to get back to you on that because I think that they do check some level of your credit score, but in general, they do have certain interest rates that are already bucketed. I think that's with governmental student loans where they'll have general interest buckets. And if you go out for like a private student loan, that's where your credit score would play in, and they might give you more of a better interest rate because you have a better credit score.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna get into some credit score considerations and tips. So credit scores can impact your interest, which we've talked extensively about. Inquiries impact your score. So if you're going in for a mortgage or a student loan or an auto loan, so they will inquire into what your credit score and credit history looks like. Now, there are two types of inquiries. There are hard inquiries and soft inquiries. So hard inquiries will impact your credit for some amount of time, especially when you're trying to open a new line of credit or take on new debt or a new loan. You also have soft inquiries. Again, those hard inquiries will impact it for a short amount of time. There are soft inquiries, such as if you're at the dealership trying to get a new car, they will do a soft inquiry just to check, okay, this is Ananya's credit score. These are the different rates we can offer Ananya in terms of interest, right? And so those are soft inquiries just to pull your credit score and just to understand it, and just to determine your premium. Those will not impact your overall credit score. They will not make it fluctuate. And so the reason that they say before taking on a large debt, make sure that you don't have any inquiries, you don't open a new credit card. It's to ensure that you have the best credit score possible, which impacts your interest rate. So to ensure that you have the best credit score possible and get the lowest interest rate, they say don't take on, make sure that there are no inquiries into your account, because that 1 or 2 points can make a difference. Keep your oldest line of credit. This is a good one because they do look into your length of history when determining your credit score. It does, if you do close your line of credit, it doesn't impact your score for about 10 years, but after that, it does impact your score. The second is create healthy credit. Make sure, all of those, lower your spending if you can in certain areas, pay your statement balances on time in full, increase your credit limit. You can try to increase that total credit available to you. You don't have to use all of it. But if I have $2,000 and I'm spending $1,000 of it, that means 1,000 over 2,000, I'm spending 50% of my total available credit. That is my credit utilization. And so if I want to keep my $1,000 the same, I'm only going to use $1,000 of my credit. But if I increase that total credit available to me, let's say they increase it to $3,000. Now my credit utilization I'm still spending 1,000, but my credit utilization ratio has gone to 33%. And so if you can call your bank or your credit provider, you can also request it in the app, or you can go in person to your bank and increase that credit limit. That can help change your credit utilization ratio, impact your credit score, impact your interest rates. So if you can, try to increase your credit limit. Usually if you have an increase in income or your spending habits change and you've lowered your spending, and they're able to see you as a more trustworthy borrower, these are all ways to try to increase that total credit that you have. The other thing you should do is check your credit score periodically. Do not obsess over it. It's like stretching. Start slow. Don't expect to see crazy results, but take it slow and build. Make on time in full payments. The other thing you can do is add your children or your partner to your cards to help them build credit. But remember that if their card is linked to yours, you are responsible for ensuring payments, as it can affect your score. Also, make sure that your payment history doesn't negatively affect them. So if you're in a good place with your credit, you can add children or a partner to help them build their credit score as well. I have a question in the chat. What is the difference between my score from FICO versus Vantage score? That's a great question. There are 2 different reporting agencies, and they have 2 different scales of how they report. Usually, I think I would say most banks are using the FICO score, but I think exactly 90% of the time you're using a FICO score. Vantage is more rarely used. Is the timeline for going from a poor score to an excellent one not cookie cutter? It's case by case. In general, is there an expected window of time to better your score? No, there isn't. I've seen that the general time period to get from one bracket to another is usually 6 months. So if you're on the poor and you're doing things, you're poor or like fair, you're trying to get to good or very good. Usually to jump from one bracket to the other, it's 6 months. But again, that's dependent on your spending, your utilization, your income levels, increasing your credit limits. So as long as you're working towards it, it's usually about 6 months where you can jump from one bracket to another. If my bank is offering an increase in credit on my credit, is that a soft or hard inquiry? It would be a soft inquiry because they're just pulling your credit score. And they're also giving a lot of that information to those credit bureaus. So they're pulling, and it's a soft inquiry.
Hi, I wanted to jump in. This is Kelly speaking.
Hey, Kelly.
I just wanted to share quickly about an experience I had. My sister has very good credit, and she put me on one of her cards. And but my credit kept getting hit like maybe negative 15 points every so often.
Okay.
And then something told me after a while, it finally told me maybe I should, get her to get me off of her card, because it was just more so a convenience thing for whenever I did business for her, I would just have her card. And sure
Yeah.
enough, that was the issue. So I don't know how, even though she has a good score, her using her card would affect my credit in a negative way. So it's just something to, think about when we make these type of decisions.
Yeah. No, definitely that's a good point. I would have to understand more from you about this as to why that happened and get to the root cause. But as long as it's adding someone to your card should not be viewed negatively or with fear. It's as long as you're using those cards in the right way, there should not be an issue. So maybe helping or getting like a report from those times as to what happened might help understand, looking at your entire how many cards you had, what your utilization was across those cards. Again, like if you had 0% of a credit utilization, that could impact it. Again, like Reshma just mentioned, if it depends on the institutions as well. So it could be determined by the institution. So there are a lot of factors that might have gone into it. Again, make sure to check your institution before you open a line of credit with them as well. Hey, Kim. Sorry, you have a question?
Sorry. A quick one. So joining someone's like credit card account could help my credit score. I mean, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like I took some massive hits on my score. It used to be really, really good, and then, some financial struggles. So I'm really concerned about it.
So you're saying you want to improve your score? Sorry, I didn't completely get the question.
The question was joining somebody else's credit card account. Will that help my score?
At this point, if you already have a credit history, the only thing that it would do is, so you would take a hit initially, because they would do a hard inquiry into your account before they give you a credit card. Your score would, your total credit available to you would increase because their credit impacts, the total amount of credit that they have impacts you. But if they are using their credit poorly, and if their credit utilization per month is not as good as you'd want it to, your score could be negatively impacted. So
Okay,
again,
so the
very trust
Mhm.
based. If you have an insight into how that credit is being paid every month, if it's being paid on time in full with a lower credit utilization, it could help you because your total credit would available to you would increase, and then your credit utilization would go down. But the reason for adding your child or partner to a card is usually to help increase the length of time that they have a credit score.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna go back to our handy pull everywhere. Let me increase that QR code. And you can join with the link.
Is it possible if you could put the link in the chat?
Yep, doing that right now.
That way I can just copy and paste it.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay. So I don't know if this is changing or not, or how many responses we have. Okay, we have some no's. Okay, it's about 90, 89, 11. Okay, so I'm seeing that the vast majority of us use a credit card. How many credit cards do you use or have? None, 1, 2, 3, 4 plus. Maybe I should have gone higher than 4 and had like a box for inputs. I just want to know who has the highest number of cards. Hey, Alex.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I have 7 cards. Yes, I know I made a lot of mistakes back when I was in college. I have 7. I'm afraid of, so I only use like 3 of them.
Mhm.
I am afraid of, what's it called, canceling them and then that hitting my credit score. Because they're long, they have history.
Right.
So, I mean, do you have a recommendation on that? Should I close them? How should I close them, maybe?
Sure. So again, I am not privy to your personal finances, but what I would recommend is if you're not using them, the thing is that sometimes you could be charged late fees or balances if you know, accidentally make a purchase or if you have a subscription on them. Your credit history, the length of your credit history matters. It doesn't impact you for 10 years after you close your longest line of credit, but if you can preserve that one longest line of credit that you have, I would suggest keeping that and making sure to close all of the other ones after that that you don't use and that aren't giving you the benefits that you would want. So yeah, that would be what I recommend. But keep your longest line if you can, and have some purchases on that if you can. And the way to go about closing a card, you can walk into your bank and close it, or you could call them on the phone and close it, just to also make sure that you have all of your questions answered.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yes, sorry, the third part of your question was about credit score. Your score will take a hit because so if you had $10,000 available to you across those 7 cards, now if you've closed some cards, that total credit, if you closed 2 cards and you had $2,000 available to you between those 2 cards, your total credit available to you is going from 10,000 to 8,000, and it's reducing. And so your credit utilization rate will change, and so your credit score will change. But again, that's something that can bounce back. We a lot of times fear that, okay, we're going to take a hit in the long run. If you have large debt coming up, if you're taking on more student debt, or if you're planning to buy a house, then consider waiting. But just make sure to take those considerations into account before closing a card. If you don't have anything major coming up, then if you feel like you need to close these cards, you should.
No, that's good to know. How long are they, like, how long would it take me to bounce back to my current credit score if I do close in? Do you have an idea of yeah.
So that again is dependent on your credit utilization. So if you have $10,000 and let's say you're utilizing $3,000 of it, that means you're at a 30% utilization. Now, if you close those 2 credit cards and you're at $8,000 of total credit available to you, your credit utilization has now shot up. So now you're going to have to reduce the credit that you spend you're going to have to reduce your spend of $3,000 to go back to that 30% number, or you're going to have to ask for extra credit from your current cards. And so until those things balance out, your credit score will not, you need to have that credit utilization ratio kind of constant for your credit
Mhm.
score to then balance out again.
Okay, so it's like a balancing act after.
It's exactly, it's a balancing act.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes, and definitely pay more than your minimum payment for your statement balance if you can. We'll run through the advantages and disadvantages of credit. So some of the advantages are that it's convenient. It's easier than carrying cash. Sometimes it's safer. You know, if you're making a large purchase and carrying $800 to buy a new dishwasher, sometimes it can be dangerous. It can also give you bargaining power to dispute a purchase. Secondly is timing. It could allow you to stagger costs or help meet unexpected costs. If we have a large purchase coming up and we have a credit card that gives me 0% interest rates, or charges me 0% interest for 6 months or 12 months, that can help me pay off a large purchase that I need to make. It helps establish credit history, and you get a lot of perks. You get cash back, points, hotels, flights, car insurance when you book rental cars, gym memberships, streaming services, concierge services, sign up and referral bonuses. I've heard stories of people that have made, $600 in referral bonuses, which is interesting. I've also booked multiple trips completely using just credit card points, free round trip flights, free hotel stays. And so if used incorrectly or without complete understanding, anything can be an impediment. But if we learn to use credit to our advantage, it can be beneficial in the long term. For those that have credit cards and have not been checking those credit card points or those cash backs, please go back and check it. Some disadvantages is that if you overuse, it can lead to poor credit. Again, make sure that just because you have a total amount available to you, you are not utilizing all of it. You should actually try to use 30% to be in that good credit score range. And if you only use 10% of your credit available to you, that is where you push up into that excellent credit score range. Credit can encourage overspending because when you can tap everywhere, you're likely to overspend. There can be high interest costs. Again, if you don't pay in full and on time, you're at risk of paying high interest rates and also extra late fees. Credit can lead to extra fees if you're paying an annual paying an annual fee for your credit card. It could be an additional expense. Now, what are some tips in choosing a credit card? So if you want to start building credit through a credit card and you have an existing bank account somewhere, but don't have a credit card yet, talk to your bank about a secure credit card. The other piece is that your credit score will impact the types of credit cards you get and the benefits that you receive. You should also think about deciding the purpose of your card. I've listed some examples. Again, please do your research before opening any of these cards. If you're looking for a low to 0% APR, usually for a single large purchase offered for 12 to 18 months, some examples have been listed. Low to 0% APR is generally not recommended, as a lot of people will forget that they have 0% APR after 12 months and forget to pay. So make sure to keep that in mind. For business expenses, you have some Capital One, Blue Business Plus card from Amex or Inc. Business. Again, these are just recommendations. Do your homework before opening. For travel cards, you have the Chase Sapphire Reserve or the Amex Platinum that give you about 5 times the points when you travel. Cash back, if you're looking for pure cash or money back into your account. The Discover It or the Chase Freedom Unlimited are good options. And if you're looking for a balance transfer card, there's a specific Discover It balance transfer card that you could consider. Make sure to look at your institution that you open with before. Check annual fees and interest rates. And pro tip is do not open a credit card when you walk into Nordstrom and your cashier says, "Oh, do you want to open our credit card?" Try not to do that, because you will end up with a credit card that has been opened in your name, and you could have, you know, these annual fees associated with it. You could have balances on it that you forget about. So try not to open those credit cards when you've been asked. Amazon also will ask you. So think about it before you open your credit card. And just some other considerations. I think I've stressed upon this a lot during this session, but just because you have an available credit of $3,000 does not mean you should use all of it. If you don't have a plan in place to pay for your purchases or the cash available, try not to use your credit card. Keep your overall usage to 25 to 30% for good utilization. And if you're trying to get to an excellent credit score, or again, jump from one category to another, try to get it in that 10% range. Review your account every month to record and track your spending. You should also check for fraud. We will get into fraud in the next few sessions and how to kind of check for any scam or fraud that would happen. Close cards that you're not using. Again, it's a balancing act. Make sure that you're closing it, not when you have a large debt that you're going into, such as a car loan or a mortgage, but look at what timelines work best for you. Set limits or buckets. You can also set, there's a handy feature in credit cards where you can set a limit on your credit card, where it will notify you, okay, if you have a credit limit available to you of 10,000, but as soon as I go over, you know, $500 or $1,500, you can set those limits. Check your subscriptions. You might have some subscriptions that you've had for a while that you want to close off, so make sure to check for subscriptions. And we will also be going into automation in future workshops. And so because time is finite, if you can automate as much as you can and you have plans in place for that, try to automate. Business credit cards with places like Staples, what about them? So I have not in detail done any research into business credit cards with Staples. I would try to refrain from going into a store and opening a credit card with a specific store, because the benefits that you get from larger banking institutions sometimes outweigh the benefits that you would get from a store. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But yeah, I've not done enough research to be able to give you an informed opinion on the specific Staples credit card. Are there any advantages to credit cards from your bank versus other companies like Discover? Not entirely. So the advantage of having a credit card in your current banking institution is if you have never had a line of credit before and you're trying to open a secured credit card, that is one benefit. Other companies, it just depends on the considerations and the perks and the purpose of which you are trying to open a credit card. Sorry, Angela and Kelly, I see that you have your hands up. I don't know, we could start off. Angela, if you want to go.
Yep, really quick. I just wanted to know, for the annual fee on a credit card, how would you put that into your expenses? Just you would list that as an expense, like an annual fee? Okay, that was it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Mhm.
Thank you. Hey, Kelly.
So, if you have a business credit card, like with a business name on it, will that affect, would that affect your personal credit? In any way? Or do you know?
Would your business card be linked directly to your name and to your social security? Or would it be on a business ITIN or tax number?
Well, I know I used the business ITIN. I don't know if I used both, or I don't remember whether I used both or just the business ITIN, but I think it was just the business ID number.
Okay. So usually I think with a business, if it's linked to just the business taxpayer number, I'm not sure of how large of an impact it would have on your credit score because your credit score might be linked to your business. I could do some more research on that and let you know. I think it can affect your personal credit score because your business credit card reports to your credit agencies, and that factors into your personal rate. So it can affect your personal credit, but I would need to do more research into understanding how much it can affect your personal credit.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. We'll go into, I know we're running on the tail end of our workshop here, but we'll go into the cash flow analysis piece in the next workshop. We'll go into actionable next steps. So today we did cover a lot of ground in terms of credit and credit scores and understanding the advantages and disadvantages and also considerations when opening a card, what to do with current cards and how to choose credit cards. We will go into cash flow analysis next week. But for next steps, take actionable steps to improve your credit score now that you understand how credit utilization rates work. And especially if gearing up for a loan, try to make sure that you're checking and trying to improve that credit utilization ratio. Our next session will be on April 5th at 1 p.m. It will be about investing, the time value of money, different types of investments, what is diversifying, and we'll also get into cash flow analysis there and finish off our financial awareness blueprint. Like always, thank you so much for staying the length of the workshop. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll also send out, I owe everyone the list of resources on Able. Rachel has dropped the link to the survey. And for any information in this workshop, I've attached a link for resources that you could go to get more information.
Thank you, Ananya. Sorry.
Survey.
Thank you, Ananya. I'm just going to stop the recording for anyone that wants to stay back and ask you questions.